Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jami.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives.
Welcome back to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle, and I'm so excited about our topic today, and I feel like it's something that people want to know more about. I get a lot of questions about, which is hormone replacement therapy, also referred to as HRT. There's a lot of things that I think we're going to kind of review in this, and of course, as we always say, we're not physicians, we're not prescribing, we're really just giving you some information based on our experience and what we're doing in our coach-client relationships.
And there's a lot of information out there on HRT. I mean, if you were to Google HRT today, I can't even imagine the number of search results you would get back. It'd be staggering. And as we have said before, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and some are bigger than others. So, and I think that applies here as well, is that you're going to get different perspectives and different opinions on this. And at the end of the day, what we encourage you to do is inform yourself and figure out what is best for you. That's really our goal in this conversation, I think, wouldn't you say, is that we just want to give people some information and perspective, and then encourage them to do what you should do every time, which is do your research and figure out what works best for you. Work with your physician. If your physician's not giving you answers that satisfy you, then that's the time to seek a second opinion.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And we're going to talk in a later episode about performance-enhancing drugs, also referred to as PEDs, and we want to break that apart just because there's so much to talk about when it comes to these kinds of things. So we want to start with the basics, which is HRT, and the idea of HRT is really we're looking to bring the hormone levels into a more optimal place. And, people ask me a lot of times, should I add this in? And what should I add and all of that. And
how much.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. And number one, first and foremost, is you got to get blood work done. Ideally, you want to find a company to work through that specializes in hormones, that can really go through and educate you on what they're seeing in your blood work and why they're making recommendations that they're making. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot right now is a lot of people that are claiming to be experts, but really don't have the certifications or the background, or, any of those things to be making some of those recommendations, which is a little bit concerning to me. And that includes you and I. I mean, we're not doctors. We don't have medical degrees. And so while we see a lot of this, we review a ton of blood work along with physicians' offices when it comes to our clients, so that way we're in the loop and we're in the know. So we're very knowledgeable when it comes to these things. And there are a lot of contraindications. There are a lot of other things that need to be explored and that need to be addressed before making recommendations, even for supplementation, even for over-the-counter herbal types of supplementation. Those things could actually, cause issues if they're not done properly. So just because something is over-the-counter and you can purchase it yourself doesn't mean it's good or right for you.
Right. And as we talk about the lab testing kind of as the first step, I might take one step back from that as well and say consult with your physician. Your primary care doctor is a great place to start, and if a part of this is that your primary care physician may not. A lot of them, I shouldn't say all of them, but some of them, I'll just say some of them. Some of them may be oriented more towards maintenance, and not necessarily towards optimization, and making sure that you're operating as effectively and efficiently and optimized as you can be. And so part of it is starting with that conversation with your healthcare provider, and then going from there. Asking for labs is not uncommon, and should be pretty straightforward. There are some blood markers that are preferred for hormone levels to make sure that those are run, and they're not always run. A lot of times if your practitioner is running a CBC or just a regular blood panel. That may not include testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, T3, T4, free T3, free T4. I mean, there's a whole bunch of markers that we think are appropriate to determine whether you are operating efficiently or optimized. And again, part of that involves a conversation with your doctor.
I do agree, and I think that just adding to that a little bit, there are some struggles when it comes, especially to working with your general practitioner,
Right.
or even on the women's side of things with your OBGYN, which is a lot of times where us females are going first.
That's fair.
In order to get some answers. And one of the issues that I see and have run into personally and with clients is that a lot of times these doctors, unless there's actually something wrong or broken or some sort of disease state, then they don't really want to run labs. They don't want to consider anything along the lines of optimization. I mean, really, it's like, let's wait till there's a problem and then let's start working on it.
That's the orientation of Western medicine in general.
Correct. And
Yeah.
so that's why I feel like a lot of people are reaching out to find alternatives. And that's why what I'm saying is you have to be careful with what alternatives you're reaching out for. We have a couple of different, doctors' offices, clinics that we work with that we feel comfortable that they're putting, our athletes' health first, that they're doing, being very thorough with the blood work, that the recommendations that they're making are reasonable and that kind of thing. Because I see two ends of the spectrum. I see one end of the spectrum where you've got people that are making a lot of recommendations that don't have any kind of medical background at all. They've gone for maybe a 4 to 6 week certification with an unaccredited company, and now they're prescribing, whether it be cleanses or certain supplement protocols or, prescribed drugs, things like that. Maybe they've got a nurse practitioner or something that's prescribing. But I feel like this is where, making sure you're doing your research and choosing, a company that has an actual physician, backing it, that they're being very thorough. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum. And a lot of these companies are asking for a lot of money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like that's a trend I'm seeing a lot where people are wanting to call themselves, functional specialists or other things with no medical backgrounds and charge you as if they were a doctor or a medical office.
And even if they do have a medical background, I mean, that doesn't, that falls into the same bucket that we're talking about with primary care physicians or your medical doctors, is that it's not that they aren't trained, it's not that they aren't proficient, but they may not that may not be their focus or their expertise, or they may not be comfortable with that. There may be a whole bunch of different reasons about this. And so this is a journey of exploration for you as an individual. It's been a journey of exploration for us. And when we're talking about certifications, I first of all, I will say this: I'm a big believer in certifications. I think that certifications are the new era of learning and development beyond a degree. Degrees give you that generalized knowledge. Certifications give you more of that specified or specific niche type understanding and knowledge. That said, just because somebody's certified doesn't mean that they are knowledgeable. Just because somebody is certified doesn't mean that they have your best interests at heart. Just because somebody is certified doesn't mean that they are going to have all the answers. So, and where that certification comes from, what that means, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And there's other people that have no certifications whatsoever and who are very knowledgeable in this space. And so it's really just about making sure that you go in eyes wide open. And what you made me think about is that movie from years ago, Tommy Boy, where he's making a sale to somebody and he said, well, I can write guaranteed on a pile of crap, but that doesn't mean that it's good beyond the words of that guarantee. And I think, the same thing is true with certifications. I respect them, I admire them, and I honor them. And I also want to make sure I'm doing my own research and inquiring for myself to make sure that I understand it. Well, I mean, fair?
I think that's completely fair. I mean, it's interesting. We see a lot of, let's just say as an example, a chiropractor who's now giving nutritional guidance and supplementation guidance and things like that. And as you said, maybe they have an additional, certification for that or some additional education on that side. And maybe that's appropriate. And sometimes it's not. So again, this is just doing your research on this individual. I do think that, finding out a little bit more about their background, and also, talking to clients of theirs. And,
Right.
one of the things that I've seen a lot is there are people out there that find something that works for them. And then all of a sudden
That
now
becomes
they're
the end all tell all.
correct.
Yeah.
They're now the expert, and now they're putting everybody on that same protocol that they did. So it might work for a number of people, but the problem is, what about that person it doesn't work for?
Yeah.
As an example, I know that I've seen this happen a couple times recently where people are going to, somebody who's kind of in this functional space, and they're pulling them off of all their medications that their physician has them on, and in a couple of these situations, the person had no thyroid function, was pulled off their thyroid medications, and was, actually put into a very dangerous situation that could have caused serious health implications and even death. So this is one of those things where just making sure you're doing your homework. This is your health.
Right.
And so that's the biggest thing I would encourage on that side of things. Now, kind of jumping over to the benefits of HRT, I am a huge proponent for myself, as a 53-year-old woman. Like this has really been, a lifesaver for me as I've gone through premenopause and that kind of thing, and the hormones are all over the place. To have somebody who's monitoring that with me and helping me to address, different things as they're coming up and keeping me balanced so that I can feel really good, think, clearly, be able to do the things that I want to do, that's been it's a huge benefit.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, and that was really rude, and so I'm sorry, but I do think that's really something that's important that we'll tell our own stories. And yes, I'm a recipient of HRT as well. So I think that one of the things that really stood out in my mind about your particular story and your journey is that it was not driven by, lab results certainly confirmed things, but it was the symptoms that you were experiencing that really kind of initiated that desire to figure out, how do I optimize my health? And so maybe talk about a few of those symptoms that produced the, I could tell you my perspective, what I was noticing, which is the sleep, some mood changes up and down, inconsistent hunger, I think was something that I saw with you a lot. But I think the sleep and the rest, and those were the things that I think stood out to me the most.
Well, that's definitely where it started. And I like that you did bring up that the blood work's not always going to show everything. And this is why having somebody that you really resonate with and trust working with you on your hormone replacement is important, because they do need to take into account what are you experiencing and what does your lab work look like, because all of that matters. When we start looking at lab work, some of the ranges of, saying that you're in range, some of those ranges are huge. So, depending on the marker, you could be towards the bottom of the range and be completely uncomfortable and miserable, but it still shows, okay, you're in range,
right.
So that might not be working for you. So having somebody who will work with you on that is really, really important. And, I felt very blessed that I was able to find somebody early on who really educated me, who sat me down and really helped me understand the pathway that my hormones were going through and, why I might be experiencing different symptoms. The very first thing that I did experience was trouble sleeping. Absolutely. I've never had trouble sleeping in my whole life, and I thought I was going to strangle you.
I thought you were too.
As I laid next to you.
I think maybe you did. I think maybe
have.
You did once or twice.
I might have.
I slept really good those nights. Yeah.
But yes, I used to just sleep, no problem, fall right to sleep, stay asleep all night. And I would just be laying there with my mind racing, and you're as fast asleep. And I'm like, and it was that my progesterone was really low. So that's what we ended up discovering once I did start working with the doctor. And that was the first hormone that I did start using. And still to today, I do use progesterone. I'd use it before bed, and I fall asleep and stay asleep, and it's amazing. And it's just been a game changer.
And you're using the bioidentical cream, correct?
I am using the topical bioidenticals. I have used, there are different options, and that's just what's worked well for me. But again, that's one of those things where I've been able to work with my healthcare provider to figure out what's going to be more ideal, what my body responds the best to.
Yeah, and I as you were talking about this and the symptoms, I think back to I don't know if I talked about this before, but I was a lawyer for 30 plus years, and the space that I operated in for a large part of my career was in personal injury defense. And in that space, we got into a lot of medicine and a lot of working with doctors and experts. And there's a couple of things that I pulled from that. One is for those familiar with the name Colin Powell, General Colin Powell, a hero of our nation, one of my best mentors that I never met, meaning that I studied him and really read a lot about him, and I consider him a mentor, but I never met him to be my mentor, just somebody I admired. And one of his 15 rules of leadership is challenge the experts. And I really think that's something that we can take here, is that just challenge the experts, ask those questions to make sure that you're advocating for yourself and you're getting the answers that you need for your own health. And if you're not getting those answers, then go to another place and seek out those answers. But in dealing with injuries a lot, and that one of the big drivers for that is it was not uncommon for people to get a MRI finding or CAT scan finding or even an X-ray finding that was positive, but them not to have symptoms that associated or correlated with that MRI finding or that study. And so I think that what I'm getting at is the point that you're making, which is on your blood test, just because you are in range and normal, that doesn't mean you're not having symptoms associated with that. And quite frankly, the symptoms should be as big, not should be, but are as big a driver as anything. And getting to the root of those symptoms is something that you need to be on, is the quest to understand yourself and your body.
I love that you brought that up, and I think that's a really good analogy, and it is absolutely true. I mean, a great example of that is thyroid function. And a lot of times we'll see people who might even be towards the bottom of the range. Maybe they're in range, but they're toward the bottom of the range, and their metabolisms are crazy fast, and
right.
They're burning through food, and they feel really good. And then you might have somebody else who's in mid-range, but they're having all the symptoms of low thyroid function.
Right.
So that's where
hypothyroid.
Exactly. There's hyper, which is too fast, hypo, which is too slow. There's also, things like, Hashimoto's that we have people test for. So that's
what is Hashimoto's?
So that's an autoimmune where the antibodies are actually attacking the thyroid. So and there are flare-ups with that. So there could be, and that could also account for sometimes where things start getting a little bit wonky. And so there's some dietary changes and things like that would need to be made in that case. The point is that we need to explore. If there's symptoms there, we might need to dig a little deeper. One of the things that we see a lot when it comes to thyroid, again, talking about how your GP or your OBGYN might not want to run certain tests. A lot of times if people are having some of these symptoms, the first thing they want to look at is TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is an important factor, but that is the signal from the pituitary then to tell the thyroid to start to produce. So that would be one place that there could be a breakdown in the process. There are other places there can be a breakdown. So without a full thyroid panel, if there's symptoms going on, we really don't know the whole picture.
So if I'm just looking at T3 and T4 and those are in normal ranges, I should be satisfied?
Well, and I'm talking about most of the time they're not looking at T3 and T4. Yeah. They're only looking at TSH, which is kind of my point here. At that point, you need to start looking at T3 and T4 and reverse T3, and you need to look for antibodies. I'm talking about somebody who's having symptoms of hypothyroid, but we're not looking at the whole picture. So this is where, although you and I are not doctors, this is where we might go, hey, let's advocate. Let's tell the doctor, I would like to see a full thyroid panel. If your doctor's refusing to do that, again, you can go outside. Most of these, HRT types of companies, a lot of them don't take insurance. Some of them do. I mean, insurance is sometimes the block to getting certain tests done because, it might be the rule of your insurance company that if your TSH comes back normal, that they're not paying for any more tests. So that, again, is where you might have to, advocate or even, come out of pocket to make sure that you're getting all the answers you need. And I've actually had people in this particular situation that'll go and get their own labs done, which you can do. You can run your own labs and then go back to the doctor and say, okay, see, I went in and did it myself. And you can see that that my T4 is not converting to T3 properly, and T3 being the end product that is metabolism. So, at that point, then the doctor has to start to address it. And it's unfortunate that sometimes we have to take things into our own hands, but, it's our jobs to advocate for ourselves.
Well, and I do want to maybe foot stomp something that you just said, because we're coaches and we're paid for that service of coaching, and our primary function is, the purpose, if you will, is to help an athlete get to their best version of themselves, whatever that is. But I will tell you, within that framework, there's no doubt in our mind about our primary focus, which is health, and making sure that we're protecting the athlete as much as we can. We can't, and this gets maybe into another topic, is there's times when athletes will do things that they won't tell us about, or tell us about after the fact, and then it's kind of hard to unring that bell, and that does happen from time to time. And I would say, in that space, it's the same thing I would tell you with a doctor, is that if you're going to a doctor and you have a pain somewhere, or you're having a symptom, and you don't tell the doctor about that, well, the doctor can't fix that, okay? As a lawyer, I couldn't fix problems that my clients didn't tell me about. As a coach, I can't fix issues that you don't tell me about, or that you tell me about after the fact, and you've made a decision, or you've made something happen, or you've been taking some medication or supplement for a year and you didn't tell me about it, and we were having these issues, and instead of being able to direct you, hey, you need to go back and talk to your doctor about this stuff, it's just impossible to fix problems that you don't know about. So make sure that you're doing that advocacy for yourself. And the other thing I was thinking about in this, anyway, let me before I get to the next thought, let me make some space for you, because that was a little bit of a ramble.
No, I love that you brought that up. There's, even if it's over-the-counter supplementation, this can also really affect you. And I'll just give you an example. And I want to foot stomp you and just say, you have to share what's going on with you with all of your medical providers. So if they don't know something you're taking, if you have two different doctors and one's prescribing one thing and another's prescribing another thing, and they don't know that you're taking these things, there are contraindications. There are ways that this can affect you. And that's either prescribed or over the counter that they need to know.
And let me tell the story with that real quick. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to give the example.
Which one? From me?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No, actually.
Okay.
I actually had a client come on board with me, and she was having some extreme anxiety. She was having a really hard time getting through her workouts. Her heart was racing. She had some of these symptoms going on. When we first started working together, the first thing I, of course, recommended is that we get blood work done, that we go through her current supplementation. I like to be part of that, when possible, and if the doctor will allow. And this doctor did allow, and we went through. What we ended up discovering is that she was taking an adrenal support that was amping up her cortisol levels. And, cortisol gets a bad name. People think, oh, cortisol's bad. It's the stress hormone. Cortisol, if you don't have enough, is bad as well. So, the way that cortisol works is it's highest first thing in the morning, and it kind of takes like a hockey stick sort of. So it's very high in the morning, and it starts to decrease and then levels out at the bottom towards the evening. This is what gives you the energy to function in the morning, and then it also is what helps you calm down and fall asleep at night. Well, the the adrenal support that she was taking was amping up her cortisol so high that it was actually causing the opposite problem of anxiety, stress, all of these kinds of things. So, and it was just an over-the-counter supplement. It was, she was sponsored by the company, so she took a lot of their supplements. Once we pulled that out, game changer, now she wasn't experiencing those symptoms. So, had we not realized that was in her protocol, and I literally had a client tell me 2 weeks ago, oh my gosh, I completely forgot to tell you, I've been taking these two drugs. One was an antidepressant and one was a sleep medication for years. And I just have been taking them for so long. I forgot that I was taking them and I never told you. Well, yeah. I just want to stress, this is super important. That you let your doctor, all of your doctors know, and anybody who's providing you with healthcare, everything that you're doing.
Well, and as we talk about thyroid in particular, we get this a lot, is that there are supplements that our athletes will take that will interfere with thyroid medication absorption. There are the timing of the thyroid medication is also something that's very important to factor in when you're taking that. We had an athlete who was taking thyroid medication and was just not their metabolism was just tanked. It just wasn't working. And we got the blood work, we got the consultation with the physician, and what turned out was that she was taking other things within that time frame of taking the thyroid medication that was interfering with the absorption of the thyroid. So yes, there are contraindications between, and by contraindications I simply mean medications that will interact with each other, and usually to a negative result. There are contraindications with medications, but there are also contraindications with over-the-counter supplements that you'll take, vitamins. These things can interfere with the absorption of those medications that you're taking. Again, that's why that full disclosure and looking at the context of the situation is so important. And the story I was going to tell on myself is I went in for a blood test once, and I was taking a lot of vitamin C to combat what I felt was a oncoming cold. And the vitamin C that I was taking was a new formula that I didn't quite read the whole label about. Learned through failure, and it had a ton of calcium in it. And so what happened after I took my blood test, I literally got home and the doctor called me from the ER, and it wasn't just the ER doctor, it was a neurologist for the specialty, because he had looked at my blood panel and said, you need to come back right now. And I said, why, what's going on? He said, your calcium levels are off the chart. And calcium's an indicator of a potential indicator for heart attack. And so I explained what happened, and I was not having any symptoms or anything. It was just that my stupidity. And and to those of you who were wondering, well, Greg, did you disclose that? You're talking about everybody disclosing things. Did you? No, I didn't. Because it was vitamin C. I just didn't think about it. And I didn't think about that calcium. And I literally got up when the doctor called and went in and looked at that label. And okay, my wife, who's sitting across from me, was very judgy of me and very mad at me for being such an idiot of not looking at the label. You remember that?
I do recall this very well. And there is such thing as too much of a good thing.
Yep.
And I do think that this is something we get into a lot of trouble with, where people are like, oh my gosh, vitamin D, I'm reading all about it. It's great for immune system. It's great for metabolism. It's great for energy. Like, all those things are true. And our vitamin D levels need to be optimized. So important.
Especially in the winter.
And you can take too much vitamin D. It's a fat soluble vitamin. So too much is toxic as well. So it's not a matter of, I do think we sometimes get into this mindset of, if a little is good, a lot must be really good.
Guilty. Okay. I don't know if it's masculine energy or if I'm genderfying or misogynizing this or whatever, but yes, as a guy, there's a part of me that thinks bigger is better, more is better. If a little is good, then a lot is going to be better. That's a bias that I have in my head, but I'm not alone in that boat. I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah. And the thing for me is, I want to get to the root.
Yeah.
I want to get to the root of the issue. So looking at, okay, how am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What's bothering me? I do find that, and this is, again, where advocating for yourself is really, really important. I find that there are a lot of doctors out there that, as women, if we come in and we're having, emotional disruption or sleep disruption, or even sometimes digestive issues, a lot of times the quick fix to jump to is maybe an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or something along those lines. And those things can be completely appropriate sometimes. I'm definitely not taking away from that. The question, though, I always want, people to ask, if they're asking me my thoughts on it, is there a root? Is there a root cause that's underneath this? I mean, if you just had a death in the family and you're struggling, okay, well then those things, that might be appropriate for you at that time.
Right.
If it's coming out of the blue and all of a sudden you're having all these thoughts and feelings and you're not sure where they're coming from, especially for women, our hormones play, and I mean, not to discount men, I mean, they do as well, but our hormones are pretty complicated. And if things are out of whack, a lot of times it can feel like depression. Mm-hmm. It can feel like anxiety. It can feel like something that a doctor might want to medicate us for, from that standpoint. So my question then is like, did you do a full blood panel? Did you look to see, am I estrogen dominant? Is my progesterone in the tank? Where's my testosterone levels? Because I know a lot of people associate testosterone as a male hormone, and as women, we need testosterone too. So if our testosterone's completely tanked, which does happen a lot of times with women as we get older, a lot of times we can have sleep disruptions. Mm-hmm. We can have mood disruptions. We can, have trouble, with training, with recovery. There's a lot of things along those lines that we can look at as well. So, my feeling on it is, and I think this helped a lot, that the very first doctor that I started working with had his original background was in, even in medical school, was researching these antidepressants and everything. And, one of the things he said to me really early on when he was going through and teaching me about the hormones and everything else is he said, do you know anybody who has a Prozac deficiency? Do you know anybody who has a Zoloft deficiency?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. He's, so his big thing was, and even though, this was his major area of study, as he felt like that was going to be his last resort. If it was needed, fine. But let's look and see, is there something that's underlying that might be causing some of those symptoms that we could address?
What's the root cause?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's, and I feel like not everybody's oriented that way. So sometimes you do have to go trial and error and find somebody who is really going to listen to you and be willing to dig a little bit deeper and see if they can address some root causes, and get you to a place where your hormones are balanced and you're feeling amazing again before jumping to some of those other things.
And I think those are big takeaways from this, which is one, context matters. And so understand, it's so funny. I just finished watching season 2 of Reacher, and the big theme that they always say in Reacher on Amazon is details matter. Well, context matters, and what the overlay of everything else going on. And sometimes, you'll see a physician in a 20-minute or 5 or 15-minute visit, and they're not digging into those details of the context. And so it's really important to look at context. The second thing I was going to say was that, there are a lot of reasons why people make bad decisions, and one of those reasons is confirmation bias. They are looking for the things that support a conclusion instead of backing away objectively and kind of looking at things critically and through that eye. One of our commitments to you in the show is we're going to talk about regular, normal, everyday overlays on these things, or business overlays. And I was employed in the financial services industry for a while, and that in that industry, everything, when there's a failure, and there are failures from time to time, the analysis is root cause analysis. That is the process of determining why did this happen. And I think you've got to employ that same kind of root cause analysis for yourself personally.
I love that you made that analogy, because I totally agree. I mean, we are definitely wired to look for that confirmation bias first and foremost. So if we already have an idea in our heads of, what we're expecting our outcome to be, we're then looking for proof of that expected outcome. So that's one thing that's really important to look for. The other thing is being careful not to assume that because a friend or family member that you're chatting about whatever's going on, and they had a certain solution or something else that works for them, assuming that that's going to be the same for you. I know a lot of times there's all these advertisements for different medications and things like that. Now it's kind of interesting to have pharmaceutical companies now that are advertising direct to consumer, so that then we go in and ask our doctor, hey, I want to take X, Y, and Z. I think I have this. And I know some people that we kind of might fall into that hypochondriac sort of mode of, like, they hear it and they immediately think, oh, I got that. I need that. So, I think that's where just digging a little bit deeper, and a lot of times it's a lifestyle change and not even a medication change that you need. Stress is the root cause of so many things, digestive, all these different, sleep issues, all these different things that can happen. A lot of times people think there's something wrong, maybe hormonally or otherwise, when in reality, it's just a matter of their stress levels are so high that it's affecting everything they're doing. So, that is a situation where lifestyle change might really be the solution, more so than a supplement or some sort of hormone or something like that. So, to me, if there's a way to, fix a symptom that's going on that's bothering somebody I'm working with, and maybe it's adding some meditation in, maybe it's taking some things off of your plate. We talk a lot in the competition world. It's not always the best time for everybody to compete, and that's okay. I actually have a couple people, like the last couple of weeks, that are just like, yeah, this isn't the right time for me. I have a lot going on with my family, or we've got to move, or, my husband lost his job, or, whatever that situation is. I mean, it's, really thinking about what's going on in your life, and how to take good care of yourself and the people that you care about as well, rather than just kind of jumping to the conclusion of let's Band-Aid it with, some kind of medications.
And I think one of the things we've talked about before is in the, again, blending a little bit of the fitness world with life and personal life, professional life, is the whole concept of leadership and making a decision. And there's an action bias or leadership bias to making a decision. Okay, I need to make a decision. I'm going to compete this year, and I've made that decision. Well, that may be the skill of decision making, is making the decision, but the art of decision making is knowing when you don't have to. And you get to choose. There are a lot of things in life we do not get to choose, but in this space, when you get on stage, you do get to choose that. You may not get to choose when you give a presentation at work. You may not to choose when one of your kids gets sick. You may not to be able to choose when things go wrong or things go right in life. But in this thing, there are so many things that you can control. Focus on those things. And if you don't need to compete and it's not the right time, then embrace that and lean into what comes next.
Right. There's all kinds of different goals that you can have.
Right.
So just choosing time and place. I mean, it's one of the reasons I waited so long to compete, is because when my kids were younger, it was for me too overwhelming to put that much time, energy, and attention into prepping for a show and dealing with everything that the kids needed when they were little. So that's one of the reasons I waited for so long. So I think, but some people, I have other people that have little kids and they do great with it. And it might just have to do with their home life, their structure, their thought process. Like, everybody's so different. So I do think it's important to look at lifestyle factors when you are experiencing any kind of symptoms. It absolutely is. And then, from there, like we talked about, blood work, having a healthcare professional that listens to you, that you trust, that, has your best interest at heart, being open to trying some different things. And, there is some trial and error. I mean, when it comes to birth control, I think that's a really great one to talk about, because, when we go to our gynecologist, a lot of times, we say, okay, we want birth control, and they're going to just, okay, try this pill. Usually they don't even run blood work to see, so I'm going to give you a progesterone pill. I'm going to give you, a combination progesterone and estrogen, like they're just going to kind of throw something at the wall and, let you know, 3 months later, okay, I'm miserable. This is horrible. Okay, well, let's switch it up. So I do think, coming from a place where we're looking at blood work, we're looking at what are the goals, we're looking at, how we're feeling, what's going on. I think all of those things are really important. And I do think it's important too to talk about the TRT side of things, specifically with testosterone, both for men and women.
Right. And I think that we are at time on this particular episode. And we got deep into this, but I feel like we got a lot more to go.
We did. And
yeah.
we'll do another episode, and where we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about the TRT side of things and, the performance enhancing
and TRT,
side of things.
testosterone replacement therapy. So,
yes.
Yeah. So HRT is the general
hormone,
the umbrella, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Then under that, testosterone replacement, progesterone replacement, estrogen as a factor as well. So I guess thyroid would still come under that category,
right? Because that's still hormones,
yeah.
Right? So so we'll delve even deeper and talk about some of the performance sides of things, and also the testosterone side of things. Like I said, both for men and women, as those decrease and do affect quality of life.
And so for today. If we focus on your takeaways, the two takeaways for today are, number one, ask questions. It all really starts with that, with curiosity, and the second thing I would say is pay attention. And as we were talking about this, one of the things that lessons I've learned through the hard way is to journal a little bit about what I'm feeling and when I'm feeling it, when it starts. We are our own poor historians, and so I may think, oh my God, this thing just happened a week ago, but in fact, if I had journaled it, it's been going on for several weeks, or vice versa. Something that I thought had been going on for a long time only appeared a week ago. So journaling that stuff really does help you identify when things are off. And as we talk about the importance of understanding context, that provides you that context, that timeline. Do you have any takeaways?
And the only other thing I want to add is, like, understand who you're talking to, who's giving you the advice, do your own, background work on it. If somebody's asking you to spend a ton of money on a bunch of supplements, I would definitely question that, because, are they the ones selling the supplements? Are they profiting off of that? Are these things that you really need? Be skeptical and ask I know you said ask questions, but be skeptical too, because there's a lot of people in this space that are wanting to take advantage of.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, of course, people want to get their cut, and so you just be mindful of that. It's stuff we see. We see the good side of it, and we see the bad side of it, and that's no different than any other industry or any other profession. There are some that are good, and some that you got to be cautious about.
Yeah. So just ask questions and do your own research, and if it seems too good to be true, question.
Awesome. All right, so this will end us for today. So be good to yourself, be good to each other, and be safe.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBody Fusion.